Starting with first story hospital horror. There was once a doctor who was returning home from the hospital late at night after performing an unsuccessful surgery. He was on the 7th floor of the hospital and was waiting for the elevator. When the elevator arrived, he saw a young girl inside. He got in and pressed the button for the ground floor. On its way down, the elevator stopped on the 4th floor. When the door opened, there stood a young man in a night suit. The doctor was petrified. He immediately pushed him back and closed the elevator doors. The girl saw this and said, "It was very rude of you. Why did you do that?" The doctor replied he was not a man. I had just unsuccessfully operated on him. Didn't you notice the red band on his wrist? We put them on all our patients who die in this hospital. The girl smiled and asked, just like this one, showing him a red band on her wrist. My mother's ghost made milk for her daughter after death. Hello everyone, I'm from Thailand, and this is my first ever Reddit post. I usually share creepy stories on X, but this one is something I've carried in my heart for years, a story so haunting, tragic, and strangely beautiful that I want people around the world to hear it too. In Thailand, there's a famous radio program called The Ghost Radio, a show where ordinary people call in to tell their real-life encounters with the paranormal. Some stories sound believable, some are clearly made up, but they all leave you thinking long after the call ends. One night, a father called in to tell a story about his daughter, Korea. And while I was listening, I suddenly remembered an old, heartbreaking story from more than a decade ago, one that made headlines across Thailand. A mother who had already died still got up to make milk for her 2-year-old daughter. The day no one knew she was dead. About 13 years ago, there was a woman living in Bangkok with her 2-year-old daughter. She had epilepsy, but she managed her daily life normally. Then one day, she suddenly died in her home. No one knew what had happened. She didn't show up for work, and when a coworker couldn't reach her, they called her sister to ask if everything was all right. The sister grew worried, tried calling many times, and finally drove to her house. When she arrived and looked through the gate, she saw her little niece running out from the house, a tiny 2-year-old, and her clothes dirty, messy hair, and a faint smell of blood clinging to her. The aunt was horrified. She picked the child up and asked softly, "Where's Mommy?" The little girl speaking in her broken toddler voice and said, "Mommy's sick. Mommy's lying on the bed. There's blood." The aunt didn't yet believe her sister could really be dead. But when she stepped inside, the smell hit her, that unmistakable, heavy, rotting odor of death. And there on the bed was her sister's swollen body already decomposing. Police arrived soon after. The doctors confirmed that she had died of her chronic epilepsy. At first, everyone simply mourned the tragedy until they realized something wasn't right. The 2-year-old who survived alone. The little girl's name was Korea. She looked far too healthy for a child who had been living alone in a house with a corpse for days. Her face was bright, her skin clean, and her energy normal. When relatives asked how she had eaten, the girl answered innocently, "Mommy made me milk." She wasn't old enough to speak clearly, but those who were there said they all heard the same words, "Mommy made milk for me." She said her mother tucked her into bed every night and sang to her. Even more unsettling, she told them that when her aunt called from outside the house, that day her mother held her hand, walked her to the front door, and told her, "Go to your aunt. Mommy will come later." That's how Korea managed to step outside safely, while her aunt had to climb the fence to get in. And then came the strangest part. Neighbors told the police that during the days when the woman was already dead, they could still hear sounds from her house. The clatter of dishes, footsteps moving across the floor, the broom sweeping, even the faint sound of a lullaby coming from the baby's room. The spirit that wouldn't leave. After the funeral, Korea was adopted by her mother's sister, the same aunt who had found the body. People slowly forgot the story. Years passed. Then one day the aunt brought Korea to appear on a popular Thai TV show called Konwad Phi, roughly translated as People Who Challenge Ghosts. The show featured spirit mediums who claimed they could contact the dead. During the program, the medium said that the spirit of Korea's mother was still lingering in the house, restless and worried. Through the medium, the spirit reportedly told the aunt, "Take better care of my daughter." At the time, the audience felt deeply moved. But a few years later, the truth came out. The horror behind closed doors. Neighbors reported strange cries coming from the aunt's home. Police were eventually called to investigate. What they found was horrifying. Korea was being kept in a dog cage. She had bruises all over her body. The aunt had been abusing her, forcing her to eat her own vomit, beating her, and leaving her locked outside like an animal. When the case broke, everyone was shocked. The same woman, who once claimed to raise her niece with love, had turned into a monster. Coria's father, who had been working far away, immediately came to take her back. He admitted he hadn't been around much after his wife's death. He had trusted his late wife's sister to care for their child. After taking Coria home, he began to notice strange things. At night, he often heard his daughter talking softly in her room, as if she were having conversations with someone else. Sometimes he heard humming, a gentle lullaby coming from inside. He believed without a doubt that it was the spirit of his late wife watching over their daughter. Mom's gone. Then one night Coria came down the stairs in tears. Her father rushed to her and asked what was wrong. She looked up at him, her eyes red, and said quietly, "Mom's gone." Her father held her tightly, and that night was filled with silence and sorrow. From that moment on, he never again heard voices or lullabies coming from his daughter's room. And Coria never hurried back to bed at night ever again. Epilogue. Today, Coria is a cheerful young woman. She helps her father run a small food stall, and her laughter has returned to their home. Her mother's soul, it seems, has finally found peace after years of protecting her child even beyond death. I'll never forget this story. It reminds me that love, especially a mother's love that doesn't end with death. If you're reading this, maybe take a moment to look at the people you love. Tell them you love them, smile at them, because sometimes too late comes sooner than we think. I can't believe I actually saw a ghost the other night with my own eyes. I was going to the store about 10:30 p.m. My car overheats. I live in a very rural area. Pull over, let it cool down, check radiator, and drive a couple more miles, and it overheats again. At this point, it's after midnight, and I am not too far away from my house, 1.5-mile walk. It's a pretty night, just a little chilly, so I decide instead of risking hurting the car, I'll just hoof it. The road I live on is a very rough mountainous RD made of dirt, and I was not far from it. So I strike out, not too worried, because I knew why the car overheated, and I needed a walk anyway. I walk down the 2LN highway, then 2/3 or so down my dirt road. I'm moving a good clip. There was some moonlight enough to where I didn't need a flashlight anyway. I see something coming up a neighbor's driveway, and hear faint steps on the gravel on my left. It's walking right up that driveway out towards the main road where I am walking past. My first thought is, shit, one of my neighbors heard or saw me walking down our road in the middle of the night and think I'm messing around casing houses or something. At any moment, I expect to see a flashlight, a gun, or a combination of the two, and some questions. Then I realize what I am seeing. There is a man walking towards me, except I can see through him. It kinda was like Predator in the beginning, where it took on the texture of the surrounding trees. But as it got closer, it was very much a man, a little bigger build, but the same height, wearing what I thought was a plaid lumberjack-style shirt and denim pants, and he had longer hair, a la Theo Von kinda. He walks out of the driveway within about 30 feet, and he comes alongside me and walks beside me for about 100 to 150 feet. 30 feet to my left along this split-rail wooden fence. When I get to the end of that fence, he stops and puts his arm up on it and just stares at me. I did not say a word, I just kept walking, the hair on my head standing on end. I saw the man. I also saw through him. It was just like when they beam people up in Star Trek. When they look faint, it was like he was 40% solid maybe. And only 30 feet away for a good 1 or 2 minutes straight, he deliberately came down that driveway to meet me on the road and walk beside me watching me. The look he had was sad, or like he wanted to tell me something but couldn't find his voice. So I keep walking, and I'm terrified to look back, and I just keep saying to myself, what the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck did that just really happen? I was never scared really, just more in disbelief of what I had witnessed. I began to get really disturbed by it as I got closer to my house, it creeping me out more and more. So the next morning, I'm in the kitchen telling my dad about it. How I've always believed in aliens and UFOs, but never ghosts, not in the slightest, and he's looking at me skeptically for sure. But then he wanted to know exactly where. Suddenly it dawns on me, I remember him telling me about a year ago, before I moved back in, that one of the neighbors we barely knew had killed himself in that house, down the driveway where that split rail fence is. I have tears in my eyes and my hair is standing on end, and my nerves are electrified writing this now. Up until the other night, I thought all paranormal activity was outright bullshit. Then I saw a ghost, like I'll take a polygraph. God strike me dead if I am lying, saw a ghost with my own sober eyes. I can only guess it was that unfortunate soul. I have been shaken ever since. My dead childhood friend visits me in my dreams. So I'm not really sure how to start this, but I used to live on the same street as another family with kids my age and my sister's age. I was really good friends with the girl who was my age, and the boy who was my sister's age always had a major crush on her. So I used to spend almost every day with girl after school and in the summer. The summers would bring lots of trips to the Cape to visit their grandmother. Now this house was insane. It had a small crawl space in the master bedroom closet. Of course, the intrusive thoughts beat all of us kids, and we just had to figure out what was back there. Now this crawl space was small even for 12 years olds. The crawl space opened up to a smaller room kinda looked like storage, but it had a door at the back wall. Now we had to crawl the whole time until going through this door. The other side of this door is another storage space, but way bigger. It was a place I never remembered buried in the back of my brain. Until a few years ago that boy passed in a car accident. I won't go into details because it still hurts to think about. It was very sudden and I couldn't make sense of it. A few months later, I had the most vivid dream I've ever had, and I am a very vivid dreamer. At one point couldn't differentiate my dreams from reality. Anyways, not the point. In this dream, I was at Grammy Beach's house, and I just walked in and straight to the master closet. I went through the crawl space through the little storage space, and through the door to find Jay just sitting in the room waiting for me with a huge smile. I don't remember what we talked about, but it was so real I could legitimately feel him when we hugged. I felt so at peace when I woke up, but the reality of the dream really shook me to my core. I knew he was dead, but I also knew this dream was not just a dream. Anyways, this is nice and sentimental and all, but the weird part is that I was never that close to that boy. He was 3 years older than me, and I only hung out with T when I went over. Over the past few years since his death, I have had this same dream over and over and over every few months. The weirdest part of it is that he died on the way to that same house in the Cape. If anyone can explain why this keeps happening, please let me know.